The sun hung low in the sky, casting an amber glow over the quiet outskirts of Atlanta. It was the kind of evening that made the dust on the roadside shimmer like gold, and in the middle of that golden haze rode a boy on a faded blue bicycle. His name was Malik Johnson, and though only 13, life had already made him older in ways that couldn't be seen in a mirror. Malik's legs pumped rhythmically, the tires of his bike humming against the asphalt, carrying him down Route 78, a stretch of road both lonely and familiar. His delivery bag slapped gently against his side with each bump in the road, half empty from the evening newspaper drops he completed just before sunset. He still had 3 houses to go, but when he looked at the sky, streaked with orange and purple, he knew he needed to hurry. His grandma would be home soon, and dinner didn't make itself. Their house was small, paint chipped and windows that groaned when the wind blew, but it was home. Miss Loretta, his grandmother, had raised him since he was 6. His mother, a dreamer who once wrote poetry in the back of diner napkins, had passed away too soon. His father, well, no one really knew where he was. Maybe gone. Maybe lost. Maybe just tired of trying. But Malik never let himself dwell on it. There was too much to do. Too many dreams to keep alive. He was halfway down the hill when he spotted the car. It was parked awkwardly, one wheel slightly off the road and the other visibly flat. The car gleamed like it didn't belong in this part of town, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom with silver trim that glinted like a blade in the sun. Even from a distance, Malik could tell the man beside it was frustrated. He stood tall, dressed in a sharp, tailored gray suit, checking his phone, then shaking it in the air like he was trying to catch a signal. Malik slowed his bike, curiosity nudging his sense of caution. He'd seen a few nice cars before, but nothing like this. It looked like the kind of car celebrities drove, people on billboards and movie screens. People whose lives were nothing like his. "Everything all right, mister?" Malik asked, coming to a stop and placing one foot on the ground. The man looked up, startled. For a moment, he hesitated, clearly not expecting help from a kid. He was a tall man, probably in his late 40s, with dark hair flecked with silver and the kind of presence that made people step out of his way without even realizing it. "Flat tire," he said, glancing at the wheel like it had betrayed him. "And of course, no cell service." Malik looked around. This part of Route 78 was notorious for dead zones, especially near the old water tower. He knew because he often rode this way to save a few minutes, even if it meant no signal and fewer streetlights. "Do you have a jack?" Malik asked. The man blinked. "I think so. Somewhere in the trunk. But I've never changed a tire in my life." Malik offered a lopsided smile. "I can help. My uncle taught me how. I've done it a few times." The man looked at him for a beat too long, as if weighing the situation. Maybe he was unsure. Maybe he was just not used to being helped. But then he stepped aside and opened the trunk. "If you're sure." Malik was already off his bike, setting it gently on the side of the road. "Yeah, I got this." As he worked, Malik could feel the man watching him, first with curiosity, then with something that felt like genuine surprise. Malik knew the steps by heart: loosen the lug nuts first, jack up the car, remove the tire, line up the spare. His hands moved quickly, confidently, though the tools were heavier than he remembered, and his fingers burned slightly with each turn. "You do this a lot?" the man asked, crouching slightly. Malik shrugged. "A couple of times. Neighbors sometimes ask me for help. My uncle used to work in a shop before he moved away." The man watched him for another moment. "What's your name, kid?" "Malik Johnson." "Malik Johnson," he repeated slowly, like he was committing it to memory. "I'm Jonathan Blake." Malik looked up, blinking. The name sounded familiar. He didn't know exactly where he'd heard it before, but it tugged at something. A commercial? A news headline? He didn't have time to think about it. The spare was in place now. 15 minutes later, the job was done. Malik stood up, brushing the dust off his knees. "You're good to go." Jonathan looked at the tire, then at Malik. "You didn't have to do that. You're just a kid." Malik gave him a small smile. "Doesn't mean I can't help." Jonathan pulled out his wallet, but Malik waved it off. "No, sir. I didn't do it for money." Jonathan hesitated. He looked like he wanted to insist, but something about Malik's eyes stopped him. They weren't eyes that had been handed anything easily. They were eyes that had seen more than they should have and still chose kindness. "Well, thank you, Malik Johnson," he said finally, extending his hand. Malik shook it, firm and steady. "Glad to help." Jonathan climbed into the car, turned the key, and the engine purred to life. He rolled down the window. "You're a good kid." And then he was gone, the Rolls-Royce gliding away down the road until it disappeared into the horizon. Malik stood there for a moment, watching the taillights fade, the hum of the engine swallowed by the wind. He wiped his hands on his jeans, got back on his bike, and pedaled home. He didn't know that in those 15 minutes, his entire life had just shifted on an invisible axis. That night, Malik sat at the small kitchen table with his grandmother, eating rice and beans. Miss Loretta said grace like she always did, her voice tired but strong, her hands clasped around Malik's like he was her whole world. They talked about school, about his science project, about how the landlord promised to fix the leaky pipe but hadn't. She didn't ask about the grease on his hands. She never pried. She trusted him, and he respected her too much to ever betray that trust. As they cleared the dishes, she hummed a gospel tune, and Malik looked at her with quiet admiration. This woman had raised him with nothing but faith, strength, and love, and in return, he had vowed to never let her down. Meanwhile, across the city, in a glass-walled penthouse that overlooked the skyline, Jonathan Blake sat alone, staring out at the world he had conquered. The meeting he was supposed to attend earlier had gone on without him. No one questioned his absence. They never did. When you're a billionaire, the rules are different. He had built his tech empire from scratch. Coding in dorm rooms, sleeping on couches, hustling investors, he remembered all of it. But somewhere along the way, he had built a fortress around himself. His world was sleek and sterile. Private jets, boardrooms, power lunches. Everything efficient. Everything controlled. But Malik had shaken something loose in him. Jonathan sat down at his desk, opened his laptop, and typed Malik Johnson, Atlanta, into the search bar. Nothing came up. He wasn't surprised. The kid didn't seem like the type to be online much. He picked up the phone. "Get me someone who can find a kid named Malik Johnson," he said to his assistant. 13 years old. Lives somewhere near Route 78. And be discreet. It took less than 48 hours. The sun was setting behind the city skyline as Malik stood before a packed auditorium, the lights bright on his face. His palms were slightly sweaty, but his heart felt steady. Rows of students, parents, and faculty members filled the seats. Cameras lined the back wall. The banner above him read, Blake Academy Graduation Ceremony. At just 16, Malik was the youngest graduate the academy had ever seen. He stood tall in his deep navy cap and gown, the gold tassel swaying as he approached the microphone. Jonathan sat in the front row, his eyes glowing with quiet pride. Miss Loretta sat beside him, holding a handkerchief in her lap she'd already soaked with tears. Malik cleared his throat and looked out across the room. If someone had told me 3 years ago that I'd be standing here today, I probably would have laughed. Not because I didn't believe in hard work, but because dreams like this weren't made for people like me. Or at least, that's what I used to think. A hush settled across the room. I grew up in a small house with creaky floors and a whole lot of love. My grandma, Miss Loretta, she raised me after my parents passed. She taught me that being good was more important than being rich. That faith and kindness could carry you further than fear ever could. He paused, his voice softening. And then one day, I helped a stranger fix a flat tire. I didn't know who he was. I just saw someone who needed help. What I didn't realize was that I was the one being helped that day. He looked directly at Jonathan. That moment changed everything. Not because I expected it to. Not because I was hoping for a reward. But because someone saw something in me I didn't even see in myself. His voice caught, just for a second. He breathed through it. I've learned that the smallest acts of kindness can start a chain reaction, one that ripples across people, families, and generations. That compassion is a kind of power too. Maybe the most important kind. A beat passed. So to every young person out there wondering if they matter, you do. To every kid who's scared of dreaming too big, dream anyway. And to everyone who's ever been told they're too poor, too different, too broken, don't believe it. You're more than enough. The crowd rose in applause. Malik stepped back from the podium, tears in his eyes but a smile on his face. He felt the warmth of possibility stretching out before him like a sunrise. Later that night, after the celebration and the photos, Malik sat on the back porch of their home, now renovated with the help of Jonathan's foundation. The porch swing creaked gently as Miss Loretta sat beside him, her hand wrapped around his. "Proud of you, baby," she said softly. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You always had it in you," she said, patting his knee. "I just reminded you now and then." He looked up at the stars, twinkling above the city's hum. "I think I want to go into engineering. Maybe work on clean energy. Do something that actually helps people. I think that sounds perfect." There was a knock on the side gate. Jonathan stepped through, a manila folder in one hand and a quiet smile on his face. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Always," Malik said. They sat in a triangle of moonlight, the air calm, the future wide open. "I have something for you," Jonathan said, handing him the folder. Malik opened it slowly. Inside was a full scholarship offer to MIT, tuition, housing, stipend, the whole package. Malik's mouth fell open. This is real. As real as it gets." Miss Loretta clutched her chest. "I know how hard you've worked," Jonathan said. "You earned every bit of this. And more." Malik stared down at the paper. It was more than just an offer. It was proof that his life had truly changed. That one small act of kindness had opened doors he never knew existed. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. Jonathan smiled. "Then let your life say it. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep lifting others the way you've been lifted." Malik nodded slowly. "I will." That summer, Malik moved to Cambridge. The city was different, older, colder, and pulsing with intellect. At first, it was overwhelming. Students debated in coffee shops about quantum mechanics and machine learning like it was small talk. Professors published papers that changed entire fields. But Malik held his own. He worked twice as hard, stayed up late studying, asked questions in office hours. He found friends who shared his fire, students from every corner of the world, drawn together by a hunger to build and solve and dream. He joined a research group focused on renewable energy and quickly became one of the youngest lead designers on a new wind turbine prototype. His professor, a grizzled MIT veteran with 3 PhDs, called him the real deal. And through it all, Malik remembered. Every month, he video called Miss Loretta. He visited Atlanta twice a year, walking the halls of Blake Academy, giving talks to the students who looked up to him like a legend. And every time he saw a car stranded on the side of the road, he stopped. Because the story hadn't ended with him. One spring day in his junior year, Malik was invited to speak at a global summit on climate innovation in San Francisco. The keynote speaker? Jonathan Blake. Backstage, Jonathan grinned when he saw Malik. They grow up fast, don't they? Malik chuckled. Only because we had giants to look up to. Jonathan clapped a hand on his shoulder. Ready to change the world? Already started, Malik said with a wink. On stage, Malik told his story again, not to boast, but to remind the world what was possible. He spoke of community, resilience, and the magic of moments. He talked about faith, not the religious kind, but the belief that what you do matters, even if no one is watching. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Back home, Miss Loretta watched from her living room, tears streaming down her cheeks. The boy she raised was now a voice the world listened to. After graduation, Malik founded his own company, SoulBridge Energy, focused on bringing affordable solar technology to underserved communities. His goal was simple: no child should grow up without light to study by. No grandmother should have to choose between heat and groceries. He didn't just donate money. He showed up. He installed panels himself. Trained locals. Hired from within the neighborhoods he served. Within 5 years, SoulBridge had lit up thousands of homes across the South and was expanding globally. Malik had been featured in Time, had spoken at the UN, and had turned down multiple buyout offers from major energy firms. But he never forgot that day. The heat. The broken-down car. The man in the expensive suit with a flat tire and no way to fix it. He kept a photo on his desk. A grainy phone picture Miss Loretta had taken the morning he left for Blake Academy. He was standing on their porch in his new uniform, eyes bright with possibility. Whenever he felt overwhelmed, he looked at that photo. It reminded him of who he was, and why he did what he did. Then came the day everything came full circle. He was back in Atlanta, giving a talk at a local community center, when a young boy came up to him after the event. "Mr. Malik, sir," the boy said, clutching a notebook. Malik knelt down. "Hey, what's your name?" "Javon," the boy said. "I want to be an engineer, like you." Malik smiled. "Then you will be." Javon beamed. "I want to help people. Make something that matters." Malik reached into his pocket and handed him a business card. "Then come by my office sometime. We'll talk. Maybe I'll have a project you can help with." Javon's eyes went wide. "Really? Really?" As the boy ran off to tell his mom, Malik stood and exhaled. He could feel it. How the story was continuing. Not just his story, but the story. Of kindness. Of humanity. Of the unexpected beauty that comes when we help without expecting. That night, as he walked back to his hotel, Malik passed a car pulled over on the side of the road. The driver, a middle-aged woman, was fumbling with her phone, clearly distressed. He smiled and approached. "Need a hand?" he asked. The woman looked up, surprised. "I've got a flat. No signal. And my son's asthma meds are in the trunk." We were on our way to the pharmacy. Malik rolled up his sleeves. "Let's get you back on the road." As he crouched beside the tire, fingers steady and practiced, the woman said, "You're an angel." He laughed. Just someone who knows how much a flat can change a life. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the sky in orange and gold, Malik felt it again, that quiet, steady joy. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories don't end. They echo. They ripple. They multiply in hearts and hands, in strangers and in dreams. And they begin with something as small as stopping on the side of the road. To help someone who needs it. It was a Saturday morning when Malik awoke to the scent of cinnamon and brown sugar. Miss Loretta always made her special oatmeal on weekends, thick and sweet with a touch of nutmeg, the kind of breakfast that made the whole house feel warmer. Malik sat up in bed, rubbed the sleep from his eyes, and glanced at the clock. It was later than usual, almost 10 a.m., but he figured he had earned the rest after finishing his science project and pulling an extra shift on his paper route. As he shuffled into the kitchen in his socks, he was greeted by the sound of an unfamiliar voice. It wasn't just one voice either, there were footsteps, low murmurs, and the occasional beep from a device. He paused near the doorframe, unsure. Miss Loretta was standing in the living room, her apron still tied, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. Across from her stood a man in a dark blazer, flanked by two others in suits. And there, seated calmly on their sagging floral-patterned couch, was Jonathan Blake. Malik's breath caught in his throat. He stepped fully into the room, and all eyes turned to him. Jonathan stood up slowly, his expression soft and open. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a simple navy sweater and jeans, but he still looked like someone out of another world. Still, there was something less guarded in his face this time, something sincere. "Hey, Malik," he said, as if they had spoken yesterday. Malik looked at his grandmother. She gave him the smallest nod, cautious, but not unkind. He turned back to Jonathan. "Hi, sir. You came all the way here?" Jonathan smiled. "I did. I hope that's all right." Malik nodded slowly. "Yeah. I guess so. I just didn't expect it." Jonathan sat again and gestured to the chair across from him. "Can we talk for a bit?" Malik sat, his knees barely reaching the edge of the seat cushion. Miss Loretta lingered nearby, watchful. Jonathan folded his hands. "I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day we met. That may sound strange, but there was something about you, your honesty, your heart, your strength. You helped me when you didn't have to. And you didn't ask for anything in return." Malik shrugged, his voice small. "It's just how I was raised." "That's a testament to both of you," Jonathan said, nodding toward Miss Loretta. "Which is why I'd like to do something in return, something more than a thank you." Malik tilted his head. "Like what?" Jonathan took a breath, as if steadying himself. "I run a foundation. We sponsor scholarships for students with exceptional potential, especially in science and technology. After learning a little more about you, we'd like to offer you a full scholarship to a private STEM academy here in Atlanta. Top-tier education, resources, mentorships, everything you'd need to chase your dreams." The room fell into silence. Malik blinked, trying to make sense of the words. He looked at Miss Loretta, whose hand had flown to her mouth. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she said nothing. "I know it's a lot to take in," Jonathan continued gently. "But I want you to know this is real. We'll cover tuition, transportation, school supplies, meals. Whatever you need." Malik felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. A school like that, it wasn't even something he had dared to wish for. It sounded like a story from a movie, kids in lab coats building robots, classrooms with virtual simulations, teachers who had written textbooks. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "There are lots of kids like me." Jonathan leaned forward, his voice sincere. "Because you didn't wait for someone to tell you that you mattered. You acted. You helped. You were brave and kind. That's what the world needs. And I believe you can do great things." Miss Loretta finally found her voice. "And what's the catch, Mr. Blake?" Jonathan met her gaze. "No catch. Just a promise. To stay true to himself, to work hard, and to never forget where he came from. That's all I ask." Malik couldn't speak. The words lodged in his throat like stones. Jonathan stood, reaching into his coat pocket. He handed Malik a navy envelope. Inside was the formal offer, typed, signed, and sealed. Malik traced the gold emblem at the top. It felt heavier than paper, more real than any dream he'd ever had. "I'll give you time to think about it," Jonathan said. "No pressure. But the offer stands." Before he left, he turned to Miss Loretta. You've raised a remarkable young man. Thank you for that. She nodded slowly, her eyes still shining. After they left, the house felt quieter than usual. Malik sat with the envelope in his lap, his fingers trembling. Miss Loretta pulled up a chair beside him and placed her hand on his. God, don't make mistakes, baby, she whispered. He brought that man to you for a reason. Malik turned to her. Do you think I can do it? She smiled. I know you can. They spent the evening talking, about dreams, about change, about what it meant to leave the familiar behind. It scared Malik a little. The idea of entering a world so different from his own. But underneath the fear was a spark, something alive and hungry. Possibility. 3 weeks later, Malik started his first day at Blake Academy for Science and Innovation. The campus felt like another planet, sprawling buildings made of glass and steel, classrooms with touchscreens on every wall, science labs that looked like they belonged in a NASA facility. Malik's uniform was new, stiff at the collar, and his backpack was heavier with promise. But what stood out most was the people. There were students from all over the city, some whose parents were doctors and engineers, others from neighborhoods like Malik's. Everyone was smart. Everyone was driven. And for the first time, Malik didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he belonged. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, when he didn't understand a math concept right away, when he fumbled his way through a coding assignment, when he heard classmates casually mention vacations to places he'd only seen on TV. But Malik had something else, grit. The kind that had carried him through long nights with no heat, through worry and uncertainty, through loss and love. And that grit fueled him. He studied harder than he ever had before. He stayed late in the lab, asked questions in class, volunteered for extra credit. His teachers took notice. So did Jonathan. Every month, Malik met with Jonathan, sometimes at the foundation office, sometimes over lunch. They talked about school, about challenges, about life. Jonathan became more than a benefactor. He became a mentor. A friend. Someone who believed in Malik not just as a student, but as a person. In return, Malik taught Jonathan things, too. About resilience. About the quiet power of hope. About the neighborhoods that still waited for their chance. Jonathan listened, really listened, and over time, their bond grew. One afternoon, after a particularly tough exam, Malik sat across from Jonathan at a quiet cafe. He stared at his cup, swirling the cocoa foam with a spoon. I bombed my physics test, he muttered. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. How bad? Like 72% bad. Jonathan smiled. That's not bombing. That's learning. Malik frowned. It's just, everyone else seems to get it. Like they've been training for this since kindergarten. I feel like I'm always catching up. You are catching up, Jonathan said gently. But you're doing it faster than anyone I've ever seen. And you're not just memorizing equations, you're building character. That matters more. Malik looked up. But what if I fail? Jonathan leaned forward. Then you get up. You keep going. That's what matters. No one gets to where they want to be without falling first. Malik nodded, the words settling in his chest like stones in a foundation. Over the next few years, Malik soared. He joined the robotics club, took honors calculus, and designed a solar-powered water filtration system for his science fair project. He made friends, real ones. Kids who didn't care where he came from, only who he was. He laughed more. Worried less. But he never forgot. Every Sunday, he helped Miss Loretta with groceries. Every month, he returned to his old neighborhood to tutor younger kids in math and science. And every night, before bed, he wrote in a journal his grandmother had given him, chronicling his journey, not for fame, but to remember how far he'd come. By the time he was 15, Malik was on track to graduate 2 years early. MIT had already sent a letter of interest. NASA had awarded him a Young Innovators grant. And the foundation had named him Youth Ambassador of the Year. But despite all of it, Malik remained humble. He still cleaned up after his meals. Still held the door for his teachers. Still wrote thank you notes in cursive, because Miss Loretta said it showed respect. And every time he passed a car on the side of the road, he slowed down, just in case. Because he knew better than anyone that sometimes, the smallest moment, one flat tire, one stranger, one yes, could change everything.